All right, welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. In our today's video, we have a very interesting subject that we're going to be discussing. This is something that becomes so valuable to understand if you're dealing with this type of person in your life and some of the tactics that they are going to display when you are starting to break out of the energetic dynamic that you originally were once in with them. So we're going to be talking about the more narcissistic type of person and how when you're starting to do better and when you're starting to separate from their energetic field, when you're starting to basically break that attachment, how one of their common responses is to try to pull you back into hell. They're going to basically try to pull you back into this very dark, dense, stagnant energy with them. And this is something that for those of you that are dealing with these types of sociopathic people that will do this, whether the people are conscious or unconscious of what they're doing with you, it's important for you to recognize so that you don't fall into it and then unnecessarily stay in a very dark, dense energy that you don't have to be in anymore. You might be ready to move on into a whole new chapter, a whole new, avenue of your life. But if you don't understand this and you keep feeding into how the narcissistic person tries to poison drip you and bring you back down to where they are, then obviously it's going to prevent you from living the life that you're here to live. And obviously there's going to be a lesson in that too. So if you keep feeding into what it is that they're doing, then it does reflect certain emotions and certain sensations within your body that are needing to be processed and are needing to be seen. But there does come a point where we want to have the awareness to recognize when this is happening and we can have our boundary and let it go and move on. Okay, doesn't mean that the healing is done with. You're still going to be healing from the wound. But to keep going back and keep having to, try to get the person that's doing it to see where you're coming from or trying to get on even terms with them or even trying to attack them back, you're just going to hold yourself in the energy that they want you in the first place because they're jealous of you, they're upset at you, and the one thing that they don't want is for you to do good without them. Because then it means that they're not the most important person on the planet. It means that they have to now face their own trauma and go into their own deeper repressed wounds, and that is something that they are very afraid to do. They're trying to grab onto their false self at any cost. So if you find yourself in this position, or if this is a video that is resonating with you, if you feel like you're going to get some value that comes from this, then I would highly encourage you to stay tuned for the rest of the video, and we're going to be going into this in very much depth, and it's going to give you the tools that you need to be able to navigate this. Okay, so with that being said, I will see you on the other side. All right, so let's go ahead and get started here. So when you're dealing with a more narcissistic type of person, once again, does it mean that they're a full-blown diagnosed narcissist? Not necessarily, but they potentially are, but they also might have a lot of narcissistic tendencies and qualities. If you're dealing with this type of person, this is very common that you will see this pattern occur once you've gotten into any form of a relationship with them. Could be romantic, could be a friendship. When that relationship separates, this is where that narcissistic smear campaign comes online and they start pulling things out of complete thin air, trying to make up a story about who you are and what you are. And they're even going to do it in a way where they try to target people that know you or friends or communities that you're a part of. And they're going to try to go out and warp your image to get the people that are around you to not trust you or to not like you anymore. That's the goal of this type of narcissistic person. So if you've gone through this experience and you've had this encounter, that's obviously a process and it takes time to heal from that. And it's of course not a comfortable or a fun thing to go through. But as you start to sort of go through that process and you start to heal those wounds that are getting triggered up for you on an emotional as well as a sensational level, you eventually start to get to a point where you see the ridiculousness of this type of person. You see the nature of how unintegral they are and how dishonest they are. And you can even start piercing through them and start realizing, wow, this is a really wounded person. There's a little child inside of that person that feels really unheard and unseen. And the person is just trying to keep themselves safe by having this overbearing, protective behavior of narcissism or whatever other potential sociopathic projection it might shape. So the point that I'm trying to create is at a certain point of going through all of this pain of being in a relationship with a person like this, especially during the separation phases, you start to really see the type of person they actually are. It's not as much of an illusion anymore. It's not as much of being in a fog or being in a mist where you thought they were one way and then you realize they're not. Now you're starting to realize this is who they've always been. And now you're just seeing more of their true colors that are shining through. So once you start to see that, it does give you more room to just let them be where they are without having to fight back at them or without having to see them as an enemy or without having to prove yourself to them. Because at a certain point, the space of consciousness and awareness that they're at is not even at a space where you can even have a healthy conversation with them. Meaning, no matter how much compassion you could even have for them and then try to communicate with them from that compassionate space on, hey, I think the way that you're approaching this is not healthy and hey, it's hurting me. This doesn't feel like a fair experience to go through. They're not at a space where they can actually receive that in a way that's helpful. So you have to get to a point where you see them for what they are and you allow them to experience their own energy in their own way. The more you try to fight against them and the more you try to change their mind or get them to see where you're coming from, the more you're digging your own grave because they're not in this to heal right now. They're not in this to resolve. As a matter of fact, most people that are narcissistic in nature, they don't want to heal at all. This is all stuff, all the drama and all the pain that they're trying to trigger in you through punishment is what fuels their false self-identity. So they actually get a feeling of dopamine and euphoria when they have this sense of control over you. Now, the good thing about this is you're a human being, so it's okay to feel your pain. It's okay to be in touch with your emotions and with your sensations. And these are not things that you have to hide from the person who's triggering these things from you. You can embrace this, of course, have your boundary with the person, but don't try to cover up the way that you feel just because you don't want to show your vulnerability in a way for them to see it. In the sense that don't repress your sadness or your fear or your anger because you don't want them to see you in that light. Be who you are. Feel what it is that you're feeling. Be honest with it, but then create a boundary with the person and understand who they are and what type of person they are so that you don't have to keep re-engaging with them. But once you get to this point where you're processing these things and you're seeing them for what they are, there's going to come more and more of a point where you are actually letting them go organically. Meaning you're looking at them and seeing how ridiculous they are in their behavior and seeing how wounded they are, that all of the fantasy of hope of things changing or resolving and working out potentially, that starts to completely dissolve and it starts to go away. And you start to see the situation for what it once again truly is and what it always was. And the more you get to understand that and see that truth, the more you get to process the reality of what's going on in your body at that emotional and that sensational level, the more you're going to be able to organically let this type of person go from your life, no matter if they're still smearing your name, no matter how many ridiculous accusations they make against you that are pulled out of complete thin air, no matter what it is that they're saying, what it is that they're doing, what it is that they're thinking about you, towards you, you get to a point where it doesn't matter anymore. Because you realize the person is in such a space that they are doing anything they can to stir up an emotion in you. They're doing anything that they can to cause a drama that they can try to control by punishing you. And when you actually see that, it's like, you know what? Wow, what a wounded person. What a sad person. What a pathetic way to live life and have to feel like that's what gives you life. To have to prove yourself in that way. To have to be so attached to another person that you feel like you have to always punish them and hurt them just because you're afraid to go into your own vulnerability and you're afraid to go into your own shadow and your own unconscious. What a miserable way to live. And the more you can see that for what it is, the more you're organically, as you're healing, not going to resonate with that anymore. Meaning you're going to start really moving away from that person and they're no longer going to be in your mind because you realize how miserable they truly are and you're no longer in that energetic space where you're feeling miserable. You're no longer wanting to hold on to an energy at all that is that level of density and that level of pain and repression. Because once again, going into the relationship with that narcissistic person, there's a reason why you did. You were still holding on to things. You weren't embracing things. You weren't facing things, and it's in the relationship that it showed you what you were repressing. And through that, it gave you an opportunity to then be authentic, and that's probably what caused the relationship between you and them to break apart. So now that they're moving into this punishment mode and they're trying to hurt you and trigger you and create a whole image about you that's not true, once again, that's an old energy that now you're starting to heal from through the separation. You're processing all those feelings of shame, all those feelings of guilt, all those feelings of fear, anger, sadness, abandonment, betrayal. And through that, the connection between you and this person, as you're seeing them more for what they are, you're creating the boundary between them because you're like, I don't want that in my life. You know, of course, the more you start to heal your inner child and that inner child starts to trust you more and it starts to connect with you and you start to gain more access to your deeper feelings, you can really look at that narcissistic person and ask yourself, holy shit, I am so thankful that I am not currently in a relationship with them in any way. I am so thankful that our relationship ended and that this is no longer a thing anymore, because that type of person, that type of behavior does not resonate with my authenticity and what I'm trying to create in my life. That's actually a weight. That's a weight that you strap to someone's foot and then they jump in the water and then they go all the way to the bottom. And it's not my responsibility to heal them or to change them or to get them to see what they're doing. That's their shit. They have to process that. And if they're going to go through their own loops with other people and do the same patterns over and over and over again, that so be it. That's their life. So the point that I'm making is you do get to a point where you start to heal from it and you start to move away naturally and organically from that narcissistic person and then that narcissistic energy as a whole. And what you will find is that the more you're starting to really let it go and you're starting to move on and not have that attachment to them anymore in any form, in any way, they're going to try to do something extreme again. Whether it's conscious or unconscious to the person, It's wired in their system to punish and to hurt and to psychically sense when you are separating from them. Remember, they're getting their false self identity attachment from your punishment. So when they start to sense psychically, energetically, spiritually that you're pulling away from them, they're going to try to get their hooks back in. They're going to then say another crazy accusation towards you, pulling it out of thin air, knowing it's not true. But they're going to say it about you because they're trying to hurt you. They're trying to get you to come back to being in that energetic matrix of depression, loneliness, and miserable state of feeling. They're trying to get you back into that with them because ultimately they're lonely and they're afraid to face themselves. So they need that sense of pulling someone into that heaviness with them in order for them to feel safe or to feel comfortable, all because they're unwilling to face themselves. This is important to notice when this happens so that you don't go back into having to fight against it, or you don't try to go back into trying to get them to see where you're coming from and trying to prove to them that they're not right, or trying to get them to see that what they're doing is not appropriate. You're not going to change the mind of this sociopath. They're set in their ways. They're going to do what they're going to do. The best thing you can do is see it, process what comes up from it, still have your boundary, and continue to let it go. Continue to honor your process because your journey is taking you somewhere that they do not have access to go on an energetic level. And they know that, and that's what frustrates them and it hurts them the most. The fact that you are evolving and stepping into a new chapter of your life that's going to bring real connection, real love, relationship love, inner self-love, all of the things. And they know that they don't have capacity or the commitment that you have to go through that process on their own. That's what hurts the narcissist the absolute most. So they're going to do whatever they can to hook you back in. But just notice it when it shows up so that you can recognize it for what it is. You can address what you need to address, have your boundary, and continue letting them go, and just let them be ridiculous. Let them say whatever they want to say, do whatever they want to do in their own space without you being there. Because obviously if this is someone you live with, that's a different experience because now that's going to affect you directly. But if this is someone that's in a whole different place than you and they're just doing stuff online or they're doing stuff in a different area, you don't need to associate with it anymore. You can put an end to it. You can stop checking in on them. You can stop seeing what it is that they're doing. You can stop trying to fight them and create them as your enemy. You can stop trying to prove to them that they're wrong or stop trying to get them to see where you're coming from. Remember, all of these things, throw that away. Recognize them for what they are. See their ridiculousness. See the woundedness in their behavior. And as you heal, you're actually going to start developing a little bit of a compassion for their suffering. Because this type of person that does this, they are not happy by any stretch of the imagination. They are hurting. I mean, you have to understand, how hurt do you have to be to want to continuously punish someone that you were in a relationship with? Obviously, when you're in relationships with people and it doesn't work out, that's hurtful for both parties. But then to try to keep punishing someone over and over and over again, how attached and afraid does that person have to be of their own vulnerabilities and their own deeper wounds for someone to do that type of stuff? That's a level of suffering, pain, loneliness, inner void, and self-betrayal that most people don't understand. So when you see someone behaving that way and you start to heal, and then you can start developing a little bit of that organic compassion for what they're doing, you can at least have that sense of like compassion for them. Wow, you're a hurt person. I'm sorry you're hurt, but I also don't like what you're doing, and I'm going to create my boundary and live my life. So when they try to hook you back in, observe it, look at them, recognize what they're doing, and say, sorry, I'm not going back. I'm continuing on with my path. I'm continuing on with my journey. And yes, I'm going to process emotionally everything that does come up, but I'm going to get to the point where I don't even think about you anymore because you're not that important. There are so many other amazing and beautiful things out there for me to experience in my life rather than having to think about the person who wants to stay in a miserable state of being and pull me in it with them and then try to control everything from that space. Sorry, that's not the life that I want to live. It's not where my soul is bringing me. So no matter how much you try to get your hooks back in and pull me in, I'm not going there. I might take a look. I might say, hey, I don't like what you're doing, but then I'll catch myself and realize I'm not going to change you. You're not going to listen to a word I'm going to say. I'm just going to process what comes up from you trying to pull me back, whatever that is, however that looks. I'm going to be with myself, internalize the experience, and I'm going to continue letting you go all the way into the point where you fade into nothingness in my life. But then it will come to a point where I can look back at this experience and be so thankful that you helped me learn these lessons. Because the narcissistic person in your life is teaching you some of the most valuable lessons that you could ever learn. And I promise you will be thankful as you are healing from the abuse. And then you can look back at it and see what you've learned and see how it has shaped you into the person that you now are. That is an amazing thing that absolutely takes place, but you have to go through that organic process of getting there. And of course, up front, there's going to be a lot of anger, frustration, resentment, and all these other feelings, grief, abandonment, betrayal, that you're going to have to go through first before you can actually appreciate the person and the experience. But you will get to that point, and that person won't have the energetic charge that they may have on you right now in the moment when they trigger you. Okay? And then another thing, just to add the final piece to it, karma will do its job. Okay? Don't worry about revenge. Don't worry about doing anything, whatever your mind might think to try to protect you. I can understand that. Karma will handle it. Honor the source within yourself. Honor your authenticity. Focus on your process and the boundaries and letting go. And karma will do what she always does. I promise you. Karma will handle all the inappropriate behaviors that are coming through in the whole experience. And if you feel like what's happening to you is not justified in any way, just wait until the laws of karma, cause and effect, naturally manifest themselves back onto the person that is currently trying to abuse you, neglect you, and punish you. Because I promise you, the more you can let go of them and continue on with your process and keep nurturing and healing your inner child, those laws of karma do not play games. So if you're trying to nurture your inner child and then you have a narcissist in the background that's trying to actively attack that inner child and punish that inner child, how do you think the universe and the natural laws of the universe are going to respond to that? The nurturing mother and father of the universe. It's not going to be a fun experience. There's going to be consequences. But that's not something you have to control. It's not something you have to even know. You just honor you and trust. Trust the process. Things will unfold the way they're meant to. Okay. With that being said, I'm going to wrap it up here. I literally have a mentorship call coming up in a couple minutes, so I got to make this quick. If you enjoyed this, thumbs it up. Drop down in the comment section and let me know what you learned. Hit the notification bell, get notified, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check out my Patreon, first link below. I have tons of exclusive content that's going to be extremely valuable for you as you're going through your self-development process and your spiritual development process as well. Everything is organized into different collection sections that you can go through. Okay? Tier 3 and 4 gives you access to the Universe B Ritual, which is an energetic transfer from me to you to support you through the deeper layers of your own unconscious mind. It's super unique, so check it out if you're interested. Second link is where you can book a one-on-one call, or you can jump into mentorships with me. And then the third link is the YouTube memberships. This is where you join the Universal Mastery family, and I would be honored to have you there. All right, now with that being said, this is where we're going to wrap it up. I hope you all have an amazing rest of the day or night, wherever you are, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.